So welcome everyone. We're so happy to have you here at our Chavches Nissan informal Farbrengen. We're three women who have, I'd say in the past year, had a similar calling here. And we'd like to just share, and especially Shifra Chana, who has some really great firsthand knowledge and experience and interactions with the Rebbe and with what went on in the 1991-92, and all starting with, you know, this Chavches Nissan, very awesome, very incredible Farbrengen Sicha that the Rebbe told over. I know I speak for all of us. We feel tremendous responsibility, you know, getting together and making this Farbrengen here today. And I feel like, you know, in the way that only a Nasi can, this really, when you watch that video, and I've just watched, you know, the Chavches Nissan video, not the one that was just playing, but the Chavches Nissan video, it really just touches you to the core. And I'm sure that's the core that each one of us has that's connected to the Rebbe, you know. And I just want to, okay, just before we start and welcoming everyone, I just want to introduce the panelists here. So I'll just start with myself. My name is Vasia Rabashkin. I've been living in Postville, Iowa for the past 30 years. Most of you know my story, so I'm going to move right on to Rivki. Baruch Hashem, Rivki's been living in LA for many years, and she and her husband run a school called a Beis Tairas Menachem, and she's I think it's also maybe a smicha program. And she and I connected last year. We're from the same class in seminary, but we connected last year as well. And Shifra Chana Hendrie is really our guest speaker here. And she lives in Yerushalayim, and she's a coach, she's a mentor, she's a teacher of Hasidus, primarily to people of all backgrounds, Jewish, not Jewish. She focuses on the topics of Moshiach and Geula and raising awareness in that area. She's the founder of the Gates of Unity School. And last year, she started the Global Geula Summit. And that was geared to raising awareness to people of all backgrounds. Okay, sorry. I don't know if that interrupted here because I had a call coming in. I'm connected on my phone.
Nope, you're fine.
Okay, great. And please excuse me if we have background noise. I had to actually leave my house because we've got so many Zoom calls with the children going on today with school. I was afraid it was going to interfere. So I'm in our Chabad house, which is connected to our kosher grocery. And hopefully you'll be able to excuse any background noise that, you know, comes through here. In any case, so Shifra Chana has a story to tell because she was present 1990, 91, 92, specifically, I guess, from 91, 92. And she's had a lot of firsthand interaction and knowledge that we really all are very interested and would like to hear from her, you know, standpoint, from her perspective and her memory. And anyone else on the program, we'd love to have input and your questions and everything. So please feel free. This is an open Farbrengen, and we really want everybody to feel a part of it. Just before we start, we were going to ask everyone if they have near them to give tzedakah, and gedailat tzedakah shemikaredes asa geula. That is the whole goal we have here, is to bring the geula here. That's the only reason why we're all doing this. These are not projects. There's just one goal in mind. You know, it's like cleaning the house for Shabbos is not the project. The goal is getting Shabbos in, you know, beautifully ready and clean. So we don't want to get stuck on any of these projects. We want to get straight to the goal as quickly as possible. We do have to make the preparations, and we're going to hopefully, Amir Tashem, you know, all be awakened to do, you know, whatever needs to get done to make this happen right away. Rivki, I'd like to give over to you. If you wanted to start, you said maybe with some Tehillim or before Shleimas. Yeah.
I think just kind of like to say a little bit of l'chaim to all of us. I heard once that when a chassid, after Shabbat, when a chassid benched the previous Rebbe, the Friedrich Rebbe, that he should be gesund, that our Rebbe had hana from that. He had pleasure from that. So I'm going to say the Rebbe should be gesund, because as we know, the Rebbe's life and health was not just physical. So on every level, he should be gesund. And we know when the cup is gesund, the ganze Guf is gesund. You know, when the head is healthy, the whole body is healthy. So the Rebbe should be gesund, and mainly the Rebbe should be revealed to us and the entire world immediately now, mamish.
Amen.
I think maybe we'll just say a little bit of the Rebbe's kapitel. It's a little bit long to say it all, but maybe we'll do the beginning, middle, and end, which actually spells MS, the Aleph, the psukim of Aleph, the psukim of Mem, and the psukim of Saf. Can you hear me all right? Is the volume okay?
Perfect.
All right, so if you have a Tehillim, I guess you can say it along. Ashri sni meidarech haholchim b'seres Adonai. Ashri neitze edaisav b'chol levi dershu. Af leifalu avla b'drachav halachu. Ata tzivisa fikudecha l'shmor ma'ay. Achala yikainu drachai l'shmor chukecha. Az le'evesh ba'abiti al kol mitzvaysecha. Eitcha b'yasher levav b'lamdi mishpatei tzidkecha. Eslukecha eshmar al tazveni ad me'aid. Ma ahavti sarasecha kol hayam hisichasi. Le'ayvai techakmeni mitzvaysecha ki li'aylam hi li. Mikol melandai hiskalti ki adesecha sichali. Niskenim espainan ki fikudecha natzarti. Mikol ayrach rak halisi raglai leman eshmar dvarecha. Mishpatecha leisarti ki ata harisani, man emutsu lechiki amasecha midvash lechi. Mipikudecha espainan al kain sanesi kol irach shaker. Now to tikra vinasi lefanecha nai kidvarcha havineni tavais vinasi lefanecha ki amrascha hatzileni tabanas vasai tehila ki salamdeni chukecha ta'an lishani amasecha ki chometz vaysecha tzedek. Tehiyatcha le'azreni ki fikudecha v'acharti, ta'afti lishuascha denei v'serescha sha'ashuai, techinashi usahaleleka mishpatecha yazroni, ta'isi k'sa'evid b'kesh avdecha, ki mitzvaysecha le'shachachti. I'll just go on to the Rebbitzins, but a little habit that I kind of incorporated into my regimen is between the Rebbe and the Rebbitzins kapitel, just in case I forget throughout the day. I just like to say Yichi HaMelech and Ad Masai and Moshiach immediately now, Mamish. And with that, we'll say the Rebbitzins kapitel, Kuf Chaf, 120, Shir HaMalais El Adonai Batzareseli Karasi Ve'yaneni, Adonai Hatzila Nafshi Misvat Shekem Yilash Ramiyah. Ma Yitin Lecha, Ma Yosef Lech Lashon Ramiyah, Chitzki Bar Shnunim Im Gachle V'Samim. Ayali Kigarti Meshach Shachanti Im Ahle Kedar. Rabat Shachna La Nafshi Im Saini Shalom, Ani Shalom, Yechia Daber Hema La Machama. So speaking of the Rebbitzin, I just want to say very briefly how Basia and I had the great zchus to establish the Welcome Moshiach Committee a little over a year ago. Actually, it was mid-Shvat, January 2019. And it was a series of Hashgacha Pratis, but in a nutshell, we reached out to each other, I think as Basi mentioned, after not having spoken for almost 30 years. And we just realized that we were very much on the same wavelength, and we really felt strongly that we needed to bring the message of the imminent Geula out there and closer to, especially among women. And Baruch Hashem, we ended up setting up this whole network of women from throughout all corners of the world, through WhatsApp, through different programs, through making resources available, Farbrengen groups, through Urim. And it's really been a very rewarding journey. And I felt that because the time that we started, it was really coinciding with Chaf Shvat, I felt it was the Rebbitzins Kayach that was actually propelling us, moving us forward towards Geula, not just ourselves, but at the same time, which was a little bit uncanny, and everything's Hashgacha Pratis, that Rivka Malka had come into the scene and had her Hashgacha Pratis stories, how she started with the Geula gatherings and brought it beyond the Chabad circles. And then we connected, of course, and realized the, tremendous divine providence that was kind of making women all over the world aware that you have to really get ready for the Geula. And then Shifra Chana, I'm not sure when you hopped on board, when you had the idea and what inspired you to go ahead and do these Geula summits. But I just want to say as well that on behalf of Welcome Moshiach, I want to thank you tremendously for everything that you've done and that you've given yourself over heart and soul to get the Geula awareness out there through the masses, through all circles. And you've just taken all of your talent and your ingenuity and creativity and really been able to inspire multitudes of people. So we're really very honored to know you and to have you here with us today on such a special day.
Well, thank you. That might be a little exaggerated, but I appreciate the sentiment. But we should have multitudes of people. Sorry?
Sorry, I just want to mention also that we would say a refuah shalema for, first of all, Rebbe Shway, Rebbe Aaron Yaakov Ben Bunya, sorry, and also over here, just David Ben Shoshana, the son-in-law of Rabbi Reichik, should be gesund, and everybody who needs a refuah shalema, anyone who needs comfort, refuahs and yeshuas, we should have like immediately like hanira v'hanidla.
Amen. Revealed good.
And I just want to say, Shifra Chana, that we're doing this Chav Ches Nissan is no small coincidence, because I think you are truly a woman who is doing Alts was erkennt and more.
Well, we can always do more, right? As we grow, we always have a bigger capacity. Okay, so I just want to say, I want to keep it as streamlined as I can. First of all, the intention here is that I'm going to share some things, and first of all, Basia and Rivki will maybe have comments, questions, whatever. And and you guys can ask questions. And also, if you were around at the time, or even if not, feel free to raise your hand. I'm not sure how you raise your hand. David will tell me. David, maybe tell everybody in the chat. There's a chat feature at the bottom of the Zoom.
No,
where
yeah,
they can't see the chat.
No, but they raise their hand there's a thing on the bottom of the screen that says raise hand or chat. Just they can raise their hand right on the bottom of the screen.
So I don't see that. Okay. So okay, good. Thank you. Getting feedback that we can raise our hands. Okay, so we won't do that quite yet, because we have some things we want to start. But the intention, my intention and prayer, truly, there's so many things in it, but that this should be the beginning of something new.
Amen.
That everybody should feel it in their heart and soul, that we should be kindled, so that the soul starts to shine. That happens when we connect with the Rebbe, when we connect with obviously God, but God has a structure, and He has the tzaddik, He has the leader, He has the nasi, and when we connect with the nasi, it changes everything. So I just want to first say, I have been for the last, well, it's almost 30 years since 1992. It's 28 years. Very hard to believe. For those of us who were there at the time, and I'm sure many of the people participating here were there at the time, I don't have to tell you that it's like time stopped, and it's not something you could forget or move back from, or it's like we're kind of like on a hold. We're living our lives. We're doing our best, everybody in their own way, but it's like, you know, something opened then for us that can't be closed. I'm very emotional, you can probably tell. But many of us, you know, when we saw what happened, we were very involved in those years, and I'll get very specific in a minute, but the Rebbe was urging us from 770 with all of his might, more and more and more, winding us up to, first of all, to believe that this is the time of Moshiach, of Geula, that this is the time of Moshiach, and he said in this sikha, which in this, you know, I said I wasn't going to translate anything, but I feel a little nervous about that, because I'm sure people are listening who don't understand, but that's okay. The Rebbe said on the 28th of Nissan in 1991 that he has done everything that he can to bring Moshiach, and that it amounts to hebavalarik, to nothingness, because Moshiach is not yet here in actuality. And the Rebbe said, all I can do is give it over to you. and that you should do anything you can, everything you can in a manner of oros of Tohu, in the Kalim of Tikun, the lights of Tohu, and the vessels of Tikun, like infinity in a structured way, brought down into grounded reality to make it happen. And then he said, skipping some words, but you can look this up easily, and either of these ladies can provide anybody with any text, I have absolutely no doubt. Then he said, as a prayer, may it be God's will that we will find 10 people from the stubborn, stiff-necked people, the Jewish people who will prevail upon Hashem, God, to make this happen. And may it be 1, 2, or 3 could be found who will know what needs to be done and how it should be done. And that was the beginning. And the reason that it galvanized me, which it did, it changed my life. That moment, it changed my life forever. In fact, I didn't actually hear the Rebbe say it. I was in my house. I used to go. It was N'shei Chabad. After Shabbos, I used to go to walk to the botanical gardens on Shabbos, right past 770, right past the Rebbe speaking. Didn't go in, but then I got a call that N'shei Chabad, everybody did. There was a chain call in Crown Heights, and I'm pretty sure it was Rivka Lane who called me. Hello, Shalom. She said the Rebbe said a really I remember the word used, like a very intense or whatever, sicha, and there's a chazara, they're repeating it, they're giving it over in Mechon Chana in the school after Shabbos, and I wasn't even going to go, except I had a mother's helper in my house and I had to give her a ride home, so I figured I might as well go. And there I heard things that's when my life changed forever. And I have to say that at that time, shortly before that time, a few months before that time, I'd had a baby who was damaged by malpractice. She was brain damaged. The cord was wrapped around her neck. And the practitioners didn't do anything to save her. And she was in the neonatal ICU for 3 months. And then she came home for 3 months. So it was very, everything about me was open. And when I heard the Rebbe, when I heard in the Chazara and repetition that the Rebbe had said this, what I heard was, we can end suffering. The time has come. We have to do something, and now it's up to us, which means we can do it. I heard that, like it just blasted into my brain. And then I looked around, I was in a room full of, I don't know how many women, 70 women or whatever, including women that I respected very much, older women who were heads of organizations, and young women, like one, Leah Namdar, I don't know if she's on the call, but she's a shlucha in Sweden. She was, I think, 17 years old. She stood up on a chair and she was so passionate. And, we were like debating, like nobody knew what to do with this information. I was waiting for someone important to tell us what to do. And nobody seemed to know what to do. And then I thought we would just stay all night until we figured it out. And then it's like at 1 o'clock in the morning, somebody in authority said we should go home. And then I was devastated because I thought we should never go home and I wasn't the only one. Let's just stay. Let's just go to 770 and not leave till the Rebbe brings Moshiach. We'll have to worry about our families until the Rebbe reveals himself as Moshiach, rather, because everybody knew the Rebbe was Moshiach. That was not in doubt in the mind of any Chabad person at the time. But what was in doubt, and for good reason, was whether we were allowed to say it or not, because the Rebbe had been forceful that he did not want to be publicly identified as Moshiach in a variety of ways. So before I say any more, I want to just say something that many, many years ago, I was in a friend's house and I opened up a book in English of stories, Hasidic stories, and I read a story of the Maggid. So the Maggid of Mezrich, I can't remember exactly every word for word, but I'll just give over the story quickly as best I can remember it. The story said that the Maggid went out somewhere with his Chavraya Kadisha, his group of holy students, and he said to them on this occasion, who in our generation is Ra'ui, is worthy to be Moshiach? And they were all silent. Now, of course, everybody who's a chassid or understands what it means to be a chassid knows that they all believed that he was Moshiach, but they were afraid to say it. So I think the story said he asked them again and they were all silent. And afterwards, I'm getting goosebumps, but afterwards he said, the heavens were open for this to happen. And the debate was, are the people ready? And when no one answered, the answer was, no, they're not ready. And so the window closed. And I feel like in a way, not in exactly the same way, but in a way that happened then. It's not that the window closed, but the path changed. It really feels like, now I don't believe that anything after the fact isn't meant to be, but before the fact, we have a lot more choice. And I think that we had a shortcut. I think we had a short path. And I think that it was like maybe like a test run, or maybe something had to be downloaded, to the Hasidim who were close. Like we know about King David, that his own tribe accepted him as king 7 years before the rest of Israel accepted him. And it was a battle. So this was also a battle. So I don't know if everybody knows, but there was a tremendous, today I was reading, Rivki sent me a PDF, I didn't even know it existed, from David Nachshon, who is a shliach here in Israel. And he was probably, certainly, without a doubt, the #1 instigator of this whole movement back then. I didn't know him, but maybe Halberstam introduced me to him because he was close friends with her family. And he initiated the movement to publicly identify the Rebbe's Moshiach. So I was within Chabad, and there was tremendous opposition, like tremendous opposition. And he tried to do things. First, I just was reading his accounting of it, and it's just a couple hours ago, it's bringing back tremendous memories. And it was such a crazy time. And I was there for some of those things. Now, Rivki told me, I don't even know who's listening, but Rivki told me not everybody believes the things David Nachshon said. I'm here to verify. And there are other people, I'm sure, listening to this call who can also verify. Like, I'll just say that I remember clearly, because after this happened, after Koach Nissan, after I was galvanized, and I realized that people weren't, okay, so we went home after Shabbos, we went home from 770, like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, everybody gave up. But I said to myself, the big people, the leaders, they're going to be in 770 tomorrow morning, and they're going to be talking about what we should do, and it's going to be packed full of people. And I ran back early in the morning, and there was nobody there. I could not believe it. And I sat in the women's section, like almost crying. And then Henny walked in, and she's like, come on, we're going with 10 women to the Ohel to daven for Moshiach. So okay, something's happening, I'll go. And then within, a couple days later, and the Rebbe kept talking, and the Rebbe said in the next Sicha, a couple days later, I guess, that heaven should have mercy, that we can tolerate that Moshiach is not here today. And that even maybe tomorrow he's not going to be here. I remember reading that on the subway, and everything was hitting my heart. It was so real. It was so alive. The Rebbe was communicating with us, and you could hear his words if you wanted to, and then you could see what was happening around, which was mostly nothing. And when I read, like the story of the Maggid, like deaf ears, and when I read, which shows that we weren't ready. That's the fact. We obviously weren't ready. And I guess we represent the world, in some way. So I was told that the Rebbe Rashab, or maybe the last 3 Rebbeim, I don't know, maybe you guys know better than me, spent 10,000 hours choosing the souls that would be part of Chabad until Moshiach came. So I've thought about that in the past, and I wonder, like, if we have, we're not all the greatest souls, we're just a bunch of mixed souls. We represent the world, so I guess it was like the trial run. Is the world ready? Guess not. So, that's just how it's felt in the beginning. And so in a couple of days, within a few days, I went to a friend's house. I don't know how many names I should name. I don't know if people will mind, but I went to the house of a friend of mine who was one of the presidents of N'shei Chabad, of Lubavitch Women's Organization. And I asked her, I said, we have to do something, meaning you have to do something. I had no power. So she said, what? I said, you should make a meeting and discuss with the leaders. So she said, And so finally she made a meeting, and I said, do you think I could come take notes? So she said, yeah, whatever. So I went to, it was in Rachel Pinson's house, Shalom, and we talked, and I was trembling, like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And then one of the women said, we should make committees, and then we should maybe meet weekly. And I'm thinking, meet weekly? The Rebbe said, now, what do you mean weekly? We're going to wait till next week. And that's how it was for me. Like, I was burning with energy, and I am absolutely certain at this point that the soul of my baby came down to push me. And I felt sometimes like I was burning with, like, the need to make something happen. And in all that period, I never burnt out. It just kept getting stronger, even if I didn't sleep at night, whatever. So there's a lot more to say about what happened, but should we stop and see? Maybe I should look and see if there were some questions in the chat. You guys tell me what I should say and what I should not. Okay, but here's a question. You guys can check the questions also, Ricky and Basia, and there's some compliments for you. here. So, excuse me, we said this is going to be informal, so let it be informal. Where's David Nachshon's account written? His account is written in a PDF that Ripke just sent me. Ripke. Well, where can we post the PDF for people so they can get it? It's in
our website. It is on our website, I believe. It's welcomingmashiach.com. I guess you can put it on your page for people to see afterwards. He wrote the diary many years ago, but when I came across it, I think Rabbi Wolf was the one who brought it to our attention here in Los Angeles. I was so mesmerized by it, but I felt that it had to be revised and presented in a reader-friendly format and something, with a little fresh face. So we gave it this look. It's called Hasidim in Search of Souls and Signatures. And it goes through all the highlights, but it's nicely designed, nicely laid out. So it's interesting. And
Isn't it also?
It's beautifully laid out.
I'm pretty sure it's also accounted for in a book I have at home. I think it's called Moshiach, maybe. Isn't that? I think it's in there in that black book.
I don't know. I never saw it before.
We also, towards the end, I'll talk a little bit about it at the end, but so added the addendum, which talks about how this is not just history, but I'm sure Shifra Chana will mention as well, that it's an ongoing story that we're continuing to write till this day.
Right. So you know what? Let's talk, Ripke, just at the end, make sure that I have access. I can figure out how to put this PDF. I don't know how we'll send it out. Maybe it can be, is there a link that we could put in the chat? Or you have to actually send it on WhatsApp?
You could.
I can add it to the page.
Okay. Where do we see the questions here, Reb David?
In the chat. Look at the bottom.
She's on. Yeah, there's a.
I see Mindy Halberstam is on. She's listening. Maybe we'll bring her on in a bit.
Great. Shifra Chana, can I ask you some questions?
Yes, and I also want to make sure to talk about what happened afterwards, like when the signature started in David Nachshon's role. So tell me, is it the right time to do that or the right time for questions? What do you think?
Well, I guess if I don't know if this is backtracking too much, but I was just curious, were you always Chabad or?
I'm a Balshuva. I became Chabad. I have a mystical story, actually. I was acquired by the Rebbe when I was 24 years old. And I didn't believe in God. I wrote to the Rebbe and told him I didn't believe in God. I wanted to believe in God, but I felt it was too good to be true. And also I felt that there was a God who didn't care about me. I very much felt I had no power in life when I was at that age. And for a long time, it was getting involved with Moshiach that really started to empower me. And even then I thought it was just, it was just the Rebbe who was doing it. But I see that when you work for the Rebbe, or you work for Hashem in any way, you get, and I even read this in a Sikha actually much later, that the Rebbe says when you activate powers by doing your purpose, working on your purpose, you get to keep them. So it's all a process. We all have so much more in us than we're aware of. And that's one of the things that I think was meant to come out in this long 28 years and still needs to come out. Like the Rebbe's Chassidus is full of it. I just will quickly mention, there's a Sikha from Gimel Nissan, 1989, where the Rebbe says probably 15 to 20 times, he says that we must do miracles now because of where we are in history. So for every Rosh Chodesh Nisan, there's a giant capacity for miracles and redemption that comes into the world. And we have to start to use it by our teva. And even though it says, Ein somchen al lenes, you're not allowed to depend on miracles, but since it's now part of our nature, we must depend on miracles, and not just one miracle, but every day it has to be miraculous compared to the next day. Now, I take these things seriously, which that's my one thing, because I got activated somehow by my baby soul or who knows what, I took everything seriously. And that was the one thing that probably really differentiated me maybe from other people, that it was all literal to me, and I would try to figure out what to do, even though I didn't even know. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I ask you if you were involved in N'shei Chabad or Moshiach activities before this experience with your baby or before Chavches Nissan?
No.
Not
No.
Amazing.
No. I wasn't an activist. I wasn't a public figure. I was very, I was a young mother. I didn't grow up in the community. I felt accepted and everything, but I didn't feel like I had anything to offer. No, not at all. No, it didn't. Life changed for me in one evening. from
Amazing.
Minakatza Lakatza. It was like, there's an expression that events that divide time, that sometimes something happens for someone. We all have things like this, that there's the before and the after, and it's really different. But I can't say that anything, even the loss of the baby, I can't say anything affected me like the things that happened with the Rebbe. Not really even nearly. Like, it's so cosmic. And there's a reason for that. The Rebbe is this, like somebody said, we were, we're in self-isolation here in Jerusalem, and I live in a high-rise with a courtyard. So on the last day of Pesach, Moshiach Sudai, my kids were sitting in the hall, and we were like Farbrengen with each other at a distance of like 10 feet. And then the neighbor came out, and she said that a couple of Chabad people from the building were doing a Moshiach Sudai in the courtyard. So I decided to put on the gloves and the mask and go out with the wine and the matzah and my own chairs. So and they were singing. They sang all the nigunim, and it was like the feeling of one heart. And Rabbi Pell was there from Malchus, and afterwards, and I said to him, it's the Rebbe. You can feel the Rebbe. When people are connected to the Rebbe, you feel the soul of the person. When you're engaged in that connection. He said, yeah, the Rebbe is the central soul. That's what he is. And he's a central soul for every person, every human. But, if Chabad doesn't feel it, I still believe that Chabad is the gateway. Like they say that the Meitzar Gar on the neck is the gateway between the head, the consciousness, and the heart, like what you know and what you are, who you are. So I feel that Chabad is the gateway between the revelation of Moshiach, the central soul, and the transformation of all of the universe and the rest of the world. So, we can't wait for the rest of the world. Anyway, bottom line, I didn't feel like that. Like something happened, like Ricky spoke to in the beginning. I backed off, all of us, I think, backed off, or almost all of us who were on the Moshiach committee. I didn't get to the Moshiach committee yet, but all of us who ended up being in this small group, there are actually 10 of us officially for reasons that I'll mention, but something lasted longer than others. After the Rebbe's stroke and the second stroke, we were still all gung-ho, although it was very painful. After Gimel Tammuz, some people dropped out. I remember being at a gathering after Gimel Tammuz in Little 770 on Montgomery Street, and Monastery was speaking, and there were probably 100 women in there. And he started talking about how it's going to be so different, and how are we going to get through Tishrei without the Rebbe, and how are we going to get through. And half of the people were like crying, and half of the people were so angry, because what you're going to give up. Like, and at that point, I went in with a friend who was a very good friend of mine. She used to serve Shabbos lunch to my family while I went to the 770 to see what the Rebbe was going to say, so I could do something with it. And we walked in together, and we walked out and didn't speak to each other for 6 months, because we were on the opposite side. It was it was a really crazy time.
Shifra Chana.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I did want to get to Gimel Tammuz actually as a pretty major question a little bit from now, but if you don't mind, I want to kind of go back for a moment to the Chavches Nissan Sicha, because that is what today is, and that was like the dividing line for you. It's interesting that I think in writing up the description for this Farbrengen, you wrote something about how this was like almost like the pivotal or best time in your life, and it was so refreshing to see that, because at least definitely at the time, Lubavitch and the world went into shock after that Sicha, and we heard words that we had never heard before, and it was very scary. And some grown them were crying, and
some people were scared. Yeah.
Some of us were feeling the Rebbe was disappointed in us, or he was giving up on us, chas v'shalom, or we were a lost case. Of course, in retrospect, looking back, we can see all the positive connotations, but also I think it was Rabbi Paltiel who said that all that frustration that the Rebbe expressed was actually not something new to Chavches Nissan. That was the Rebbe revealing the way he felt every moment of his life.
Yeah,
I mean, that
totally makes sense.
The Geula. So it was really kind of like earth-shattering. Yet, having said that, I think I read in a recent Beis Moshiach article something very nice that I'd never heard before. Maybe others have heard it, but the Rebbe actually used the term giving. He didn't say leaving it up to you. He said, I'm giving it.
Over
to you.
Yeah.
When you leave something for somebody, first of all, they have the option if they want to take it or access it or not. and it's not necessarily direct, giving. But here the Rebbe was saying giving. So on the one hand, that means we have no choice. If you're given something, you take it. On the other hand, along with that, he gave an asinas payach. He gave us a very
transmission,
strong,
right? It's a transmission.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I want to add to that. I think that Chavchas Nissan really gave us two very important things. One is that we have the ability to do it. I think a lot of people just wanted to rely on the Rebbe.
Totally.
And that's Chagas Chassidus. That's not Chabad Chassidus. We can't just rely on the Rebbe. And I'm not minimizing all the work. I mean, the shluchim are incredible. Their Mesiras Nefesh is like 1,000%, to pick up, to leave your family, to leave the comforts, to leave, everything, and just devote your entire life to, the Rebbe's work and Hashem's work, which is what the Rebbe's work is. So that's like just tremendous. But at the same time, the Rebbe was telling us, hey, now you have this ability to take it to the next step. And it's kind of like we were mentioning before about getting ready for Shabbos. We can't get stuck in all our preparations, which are amazing. You don't want to be preparing a wedding cake for days and days and days on end when there's a wedding to go to. There's a deadline. You've got to get things ready by a certain time.
Yes. Yeah, which
and
is
I think we built up beautiful things. People have communities, and we started our community here from nothing, and it's very, and you put so much kaiches into that, it's very easy to get very involved in what you're doing and feel like that's the goal, to do what I'm doing. That's the goal. And that is part of it, because preparing the world for that Moshiach state, that Moshiach Geula state it's an awareness, and it's just going to be more awareness when Moshiach gets here. It's just going to be more revelation and more awareness. So that's all part of it, and preparing the world for it. But getting Moshiach actually here and getting Geula here is a very specific action that needs to happen. And I think some people want to say, oh, it's just a process. Let it happen really slowly. We'll slowly evolve into that. No, it's the Ani Mamin is every day, that today I can make it happen. And I take that, and I hope everybody takes that very literally. It's not just a nice euphemistic phrase that the Rambam was very poetic and put together. He really meant today you have to be, you have to do everything to take. And certainly the Rebbe has said that in so many times, specifically, I mean, I can't even say specifically Chavchas Nissan. I heard it so many times myself. The Rebbe screaming, even before Mincha, Mashiach should be here. The Rebbe wasn't being cute.
We studied. Were you in 770?
Being cute,
Were you in 770 before Yom Kippur, Erev Yom Kippur, like the Sicha before Mincha, where it was like an hour or two before the fast, and the Rebbe was saying we're going to go out of Gullus because it's going to be before Yom Kippur. We're not going to fast on Yom Kippur because we're going to be, I guess because of Vinya Beis Hamikdash, which makes you putter from fasting on Yom Kippur, something like that. And everybody's standing there looking at their watch. Am I going to get to eat? Or is Mashiach going to come? I don't want to leave. Yeah.
I don't know if I was there at that time. I would remember it specifically. My brain is not as organized with the date line and the time, but I certainly remember very specific many moments standing there, Simchas Torah, Napoleon's March. I mean, again and again and again, we stood there and felt like it was going to happen any moment, So the Rebbe really made it very alive and real for all of us. And I think that connection, with the, with that whole Gimel Tammuz time, there was this tremendous concealment. And I think making that connection with the Rebbe was just that much more difficult for people afterwards. Keeping it alive, keeping it really strong and alive didn't come as naturally for everybody. Just because of people's natural makeup, the way their logic, brain.
Of course. Our world is what we see.
Yeah. And everybody processes things differently. Everybody's holding at a different place in their life. Like you said, you were very raw at the time. Everybody has their experience at the time that plays into, what's going on. But I think besides the ability that the Rebbe gave us, he made it our, obviously, and this is what he said, he made it our responsibility to do it. So we have those two things. We have the ability and we have the responsibility to make it happen. And
can I just want to speak to 1 second? Don't lose your train of thought. But I just want to. It's obvious when it's core. It's core when Hashem tells us to do something, or when the Nasi tells us to do something, it automatically comes with the ability. But we have to, if the
Yes.
ability is not necessarily on the surface, like my abilities that I now use every day were not, and that I hope to increase a lot, were not on the surface at all. They were deeply hidden. And taking on the responsibility brought them out. And that also, I just wanted to say that. It's like, you know, it's not that just because you don't feel like you have the ability does not mean you don't. The principle is you do, and now figure out how to, you know, that might be a process to bring it out, but you'll have miraculous help.
And I think that's the answer to this whole puzzle that we've been all trying to, you know, figure out, is that if we all really just apply ourselves, it's possible. We can do it. It's possible. This is not a process.
Basia, sorry, can I just add that the ability and the responsibility, there's also a third thing, which is maybe the happier aspect to dwell on, is that it's a huge privilege and it's a huge merit. There's no greater merit, not just in being, you know, Jewish and in being Jewish women, but being Chabad Jewish women. The Rebbe put us on such a pedestal, and we are, in a great sense, the luckiest people in the world to have the honor and the privilege that should be in our merit, and to be in the 7th generation as well. So thinking about what a great zchus it is makes it a little bit easier to carry this really very, very essential burden.
Okay,
But
so
I want to try to go back before.
no, hang on a second, Mindy Halberstam,
because
I just want to say Mindy Halberstam, who introduced me to David Nachshon, who was one of the founders of the Moshiach committee, is on now. I just told her about this like 3 seconds before it started, and she has to be somewhere. She's asking if we can go over the events from there of the signatures of Kabbalas Malchus and the Kabbalas Panim. So if that's okay with you guys, maybe we do that.
Yes, please.
First,
Please.
I'll try to do it in a sort of condensed way. And by the way, I just want to repeat to everybody, we're here and we're going to take questions, and also you're sharing. And so this is going to be a Farbrengen. We just have to get certain information out into the world. I started saying that a lot of us dropped off, you know, some persisted longer than others. I turned to the learning and the transformation and working, you know, going inward, going outward with the going inward, you know, healing stuff, and, you know, and deep chassidus. And I became adamantly opposed to the Kabbalas Malchus, which means to take upon ourselves in a revealed way the Rebbe's position as Moshiach, that different relationship. There's a different relationship with Moshiach. It's a relationship. So, and even when I did the first Geula Summit, a lot of people, maybe Basia or Rivki were among them, I don't remember, but a lot of people were really, you know, like, please mention, can you please talk about Kabbalas Malchus? I'm like, no, you know, you people, we did that. It's over. And I was very against it, and something switched. And I just want to bring that up before I say, I'll go into the details as clearly and concisely as I can in a second. But I just want to say, that's why I gave over the story of the Maggid that I read, because even I'm asking myself, if I was so, I lived and breathed it, like in a way that you cannot imagine unless you were with me then, Mindy, or, you know, we all did. But I lived and breathed it. I didn't sleep at night. One night I stayed up all night, and all I could think of to do at 5 in the morning was blow the shofar. Like, I could not rest from it. And if I could shut down and say it's not, you know, it's not important, it's not the thing. So I'm thinking maybe I'm like one of the students of the Maggid. You know, we all are like, and I'm hoping that because something switched in me, and I think now all of a sudden it became obvious that this is the time, probably thanks to these 2 women and Rabbi Wolf, and, you know, just who knows, you know, thanks to the Rebbe, but I hope that it's the time for everyone. And I hope we've gone full circle. And, you know, Rabbi Wolf explains what the relationship is between this cosmic soul, the central soul of Moshiach, and every human in very beautiful ways. And I have several interviews with him on that, and I can talk about that too, but not today, it's not the time. But that's very important. It's very important to know that. But the first thing is to make the connection. The messianic mission is downloaded, is given to the Moshiach, is given to that person in every generation. The Rebbe said, and quoting, you know, sources, that in every generation there's a person who is worthy to be Moshiach, but because of the various obstacles and delays in the generation, in other words, the neck's not ready, not letting it get through. So the time isn't right, and he cannot redeem that generation and all generations, all the Jewish people, all of humanity. But he said that, actually the Rebbe said, now in our generation, all of these obstacles have been removed, and now all we have to do is greet and accept Moshiach, the righteous Moshiach, in literal, actual, and Moshiach came to Paul Mamesh, which was the genesis of the Kabbalas Panim, which I'll get to very shortly. Anyway, so to me, it's a very exciting opportunity to actually get this out where it was stuck and never coming out. And I actually went in my bookshelf and found this book that we produced, our group, Reading Moshiach Here and Now, the Kabbalah Panim Moshiach that came to Paul Mamesh. Back then, I didn't even look at it. Since then, didn't even look at it. It's got a number of our answers, dates. So I want to first say, go back to the thing about David Nachshon, in case anyone's holding there. I remember being in 770 when David Nachshon stood up with Avi Taub, his two partners, Avi Taub and Shmaria. I know his last name, Indy does. And the three of them stood there and they proclaimed Yichi. They proclaimed, and they said something, I just read about it, but I didn't hear that from the women's section, but I saw them saying Yichi and I heard it. I saw the Rebbe's face. And I was wondering, because I was watching the whole time to see what was happening, because some people said the Rebbe didn't want it, and other people said the Rebbe didn't want it, mostly David Nachshon. And I saw the most amazing, beautiful expression on the Rebbe's face, like a glow, and like he was, to me at the time, it looked like he was looking at, like a father looking at his kids who figured something out, and he was really proud. And he was just sitting back and letting it happen. But as I just remembered reading this document from that Rivki sent me the next day, Lubavitch Shluchim from all over the world started to call the Rebbe secretaries and complain and say that this was going to turn people off. So what happened, and this is just a point I want to bring out because it's really important. Now we have the concept of fake news. So I watched as a nobody in my mind, as a newcomer to any kind of leadership. I was watching the fake news, right and left. Like I would go to 770 and see what happened, and then at the time they had something called fax sicha, where they would send out, they do a synopsis of the sicha, what the Rebbe said in the Farbrengen. They'd send it out in a fax, like a one sheet, and what people were hearing and seeing was nothing like what was actually happening. And I kept watching what was happening, hearing what people said about it, and the gap was just ridiculous. And then, there was a whole period of time, like there was a whole back and forth with different people, different shluchim, different chassidim writing to the Rebbe and saying, in our community, we think it's turning people off. Then the Rebbe said, maybe this is not a good idea. It's a good idea not to talk about it, even talking about Moshiach. And then other people would write in, I think that our community is ready for it. The Rebbe said, it's every judge, every halachic authority has to evaluate, according to his own understanding, like go ahead. But there was very, very much, again, the idea of the net, there was very, very much a receptivity of the Rebbe, whether we were against it, he received. If we were for it, he received. In terms of the women, we were treated very well. Like there's no time that we went to the Rebbe with like all these things that apparently the men were afraid to do. Like David Nachshon writes about how they were terrified to do these signatures of, that Rivki mentioned, signatures of Kabbalas Amalchus, signing. I take upon myself to the Rebbe as Melech HaMashiach, and I'm asking him to take us out of Golus. Like the men were writing, we're going to have Mesiras Nefesh, do anything. The Rebbe says, the women just said, take us out of Golus now, we're ready. And the Rebbe, but the Rebbe, the Rebbe was so receptive. And yet, okay, so after this meeting, I guess was in Nissan, so, or Iyar, the beginning of Iyar, and David Nachshon was doing things. I was watching, but so we started a newsletter with Mustavora. My husband and I arranged, it's like a giant concert they closed out the Eastern Parkway, Simcha dancing for Moshiach, and the Piamentas played, and different things we did. But then Mindy was sitting next to me, and we were neighbors in 770. We had seats next to each other in 770 for Tishrei, and we were talking. We didn't really know each other. And she told me that her husband was good friends with David Nachshon. He was always in their house, and I should meet him. And she introduced us, and I asked him what I should do. I said, I'm ready to do something. I want to know what I should do. And he said, get the women to sign Kabbalas Amalchus. I'm like, okay. And it wasn't a shock to me, because even in the beginning, when I was first trying to figure out what to do, a friend of mine my friend's husband, actually, I said, what does the Rebbe mean? He said, there's only one thing we can do. We have to crown him as Moshiach because it's the only thing he can't do himself. What does he need us for? He's the central soul. So that made sense to me. And I said, but the Rebbe has always been against it. And he said, that's why we have to do it. We can't ask him. Devin Morris, I should give him credit. And he was right. He was right. And that was the pattern that became very obvious, that when you came to the Rebbe with something, he like endorsed it like in the most incredibly, almost ridiculous ways, such powerful ways, especially the women, especially our group. And when you showed hesitation, he's like, okay, yeah, not a good idea. And one time somewhere, and I had this very strong policy of never asking, just doing, like I was adamant about it. And one time, if you guys are listening, I hope you're not mad, you won't be mad that I'm saying it, but one time the Presidium of N'shei Chabad wanted to do some kind of big publicity campaign, and they asked the Rebbe. They didn't tell me they were going to ask the Rebbe. They wrote a letter to ask the Rebbe. And the Rebbe answered them something like, every like governing body has to lead according to their own perspective. The lo l'shaleni, don't ask me. And then people will interpret it that it's my idea. So this is the thing. Like, are we ready? Do we believe there's somebody who's worthy to be Moshiach, and are we going to stand for it, or are we not? So anyway, after he told me to do signatures, several people participated with me. Mindy, Chana Popak, I don't remember who else, Leah Pinson, Rachel Pinson. We went out, I don't remember exactly who was on the street, but there's Simchas Beis Shoei, but there's dancing in the streets in 770 all night. And it was very big at the time. There were a lot of people out. And so we just took, we went around. Actually, we gathered signatures. I don't remember, a couple hundred signatures. And actually, because it had then the endorsement of N'shei Chabad, women were, which I thought was interesting. Women were, N'shei Chabad approves? Yes. Okay, I'll sign. Which also I thought was a little funny. But that's what happened. So we went, that was, I think, a Thursday night. So we went Friday late, just Leah Pinson and I at that time, as I recall, went. We had a big envelope, big white envelope with all the signatures in it. And on the front of the envelope, she had written Nitzchuni Banai Nitzchuni, which the Rebbe had said, I think on Yom Kippur, in the Sikha before Yom Kippur, if I'm not mistaken, he talked about how we're going to prevail on Hashem, even though he's holding back the Geula, but we are going to prevail, and then he's going to be happy about it. He's going to say, which obviously is the case of the Rebbe also. And now that I'm thinking about it, he will say, my children, you've won over me, you've won over me. So she said, she was very, very clever, and she was always our spokesperson, and she wasn't afraid at all. I would stand right next to her. I would be the instigator and pusher, and she would be the spokesperson, and she wrote that on the envelope in big letters. And I said, how are we going to get this to the Rebbe? They're not going to give it to him if we give it to them. So she's, because there now was opposition from the secretaries who were saying the Rebbe doesn't want this, it's going to hurt the Rebbe. So she said, we're going to go to, it used to be that the Rebbe would come out from his office into the hallway, and he'd either go in the elevator down to 770, or he'd cross the hallway and go into the small hall where the Zal, where the Bachrim learned. So people would wait there. If they were going to go on a trip, or if they needed a bracha for something, they just wait in the hall for him to come in and out. And it happened usually more than once a day. So we went. So we're going to go there. We're going to stand there. We're going to hold the envelope so the Rebbe can read it. And the secretaries, won't see us, but he'll see us and he'll take it. I'm like, yeah, really? I didn't believe her, but I'm like, okay. So we went there and we stood in the hall, and the Rebbe came out on his way, gave brachas to certain people, didn't look at us at all, went into the Zal. And I was very disappointed. I said, didn't work. It didn't happen. She said, wait, he's going to come back. So he came back, and he passed us and went into the hall to his office. And my heart just fell into my feet. And just then one of the secretaries saw the envelope, and with a very annoyed looks, pulled it out of Leah's hand. And he was holding it. And just then I saw this hand reach out from where the Rebbe had gone and hold the other part of the envelope, and started to pull it. It was the Rebbe, started to pull the envelope, and the secretary didn't realize what's going on yet. And so he's holding it back, and a few tugs, and then the envelope was in the Rebbe's hand. The Rebbe came out and he held the envelope to his chest, and he almost like he bowed his head to us. It was unbelievable, but true story. Okay, that's the first time. But then people said, we told people, and they didn't believe us. And
Shifra Chana, that's the first time you gave in signatures to the Rebbe?
yeah. It was
Wow.
stealth. It was guerrilla
Wow.
Kabbalah Samalchus. I want to say something also. I mean, it's really fun to talk about this finally, but and I'm inviting Moshiach committee. Let's do it together next time. But every time, the thing is that every time, like even David Nachshon had this exact same problem. Things happen with the Rebbe and people would say that it didn't happen. Like, I don't remember exactly at this point, I hope I will, what thing happened, which thing people said at which time, but people said the Rebbe didn't know it was that time, people said the Rebbe didn't know what was in the envelope. So, I mean, the Rebbe doesn't know what's in the envelope. When Rabbi Friedman, I went to Beis Chana, I lived in Minnesota. I have if you don't know my story, you should Google Shifra Hendrie, the tapestry, and you'll see my story. I have a mirror, it goes around. It's a very mystical story that people tell around Yud Shvat in many places. It's worth reading, but I ended up going to Beis Chana. I was tricked by my brother into going there. I wasn't interested, but and now I forgot what I was going to say about that. Okay, never mind.
You were mentioning how some people don't believe the story. They want to say that it didn't happen.
Yeah, I don't remember why I was bringing up being in Minnesota, but it doesn't matter. Oh yes, I do. I was going to just say that when I started to become firm, or when I was investigating, Manas Friedman openly said, you know, the Rebbe's Moshiach. And I, of course, you know, a Jew, everybody Jew knows this is Moshiach, but if it's real or not real, we know more or less what it is. If we're not completely, you know, if we have any kind of background or family background that we're aware of. I guess not everybody does, but I did. And so it made sense to me. And but it, you know, wasn't something you could talk about. So anyway, but what happened was there was so much controversy that every time, so the Rebbe tells me, so I was brought up to everybody, like Rebbe Groner came to Beis Chana and she told us we could write to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe knows every soul, and the Rebbe knows everything. All these stories about how people would go in to see the Rebbe and they had prepared a list that they would give to the Rebbe of questions, and he'd answer every question. But then they went out and they saw that they still had the list, and they'd given him their shopping list. You know, all these stories I'd heard. So when people started telling me, and of course they're true, when people started telling us things like the Rebbe didn't know what was in the envelope, was ridiculous. Like you're a Hasidim, that's what you're saying. So the next, but we kept doing strategic plots to get more, to make more proof that this was really happening. So the second time we went back in, if you don't mind, I will just look so I can remember exactly. Okay, the second time was Hoshana Rabbah, so that was a couple days later. That was probably Sunday, but I don't remember for sure. In 1992, we went with 10 women. We didn't just go by ourselves. We had the same exact envelope, white, same size, same thing written on it. So people would, you know, not say that one looked like that, but the Rebbe didn't know that this one was this. So we had the same thing. We handed it to him, and Leah said to him, she said, last second, she said, we have to have 10 women. We have to have a minyan of women. And I thought to myself, what minyan? There's no minyan of women. But we ended up with 10 women. So she spontaneously, she said, we are a group of 10 women, minyan nashim, something like that, that the Rebbe should reveal himself as Moshiach and take us out of Gullus. And the Rebbe said, Amen, Hatzlacha Rabbah, Soros Tovos. And then he gave her another letter. And he said specifically, this is for the letter, the Pidyon Nefesh, and the names.
You mean another $1?
Another $1, yeah, another $1, sorry, yeah, another $1. But he said specifically, explicitly.
Is this the video that you had played?
No, this is the one before the video, because this time, this one, what did people say at this time? This one, people said something like the Rebbe just, he doesn't want to hurt the women's feelings, something like that.
Oh.
So then we decided that we should, instead of the white envelope, we had to bring, and I don't think we were filmed then. I think that Mindy's husband Chaim Baruch arranged to have us filmed the next time so that people couldn't, you know, make up, they'd see for themselves. So that's the video. So maybe, David, maybe we can play that video right now for a second. This is a video of the third time, and we made a beautiful box out of cardboard, and we had signatures in it. And this is Leah Pinson speaking.
ברוך השם יש המשך פעילות
That's me in the
נפלאה.
gray coat.
ברוך השם יש המשך פעילות נפלאה בכל מכל כל. במבצע וביקשו את השם ודוד מלכה ומצאו מתפשט תחת נשי חב"ד וכל העולם כולו ולכל השליחות. אנחנו מקבלות בזה נשי ובנות חב"ד את פני משיח צדקנו כבוד קודשו אדמו שליטה. יולכנו קוממיות לארצנו הקדושה.
זה
ברוך
בשבילי,
ממש אמן.
בבשורות טובות, ובשביל כל זמנים צריך לשלם לי צדקה, ותהיה הצלחה רבה וללכת מחייב אל חויו, עד שתלכו אל אלוקים בצין בגאולה אמיתית והשלמה. הצלחה והצלחה, הצלחה רבה.
Here's Mindy.
Yeah, also pleasure.
Christopher in the background, Hanukkah Pack. Spanish Spritzer.
Go through, please.
N'shei Chabad.
יפה מלשמוע.
Okay, notice this woman. Okay, the woman who was just speaking to the Rebbe, I want to say her name was Bracha Topolansky, and she had had a tragedy, and she came to the Rebbe, and often, right at that time, and she kept begging the Rebbe to reveal himself as Moshiach and take us out of Golis. And I don't know if you saw her face, but she was really suffering, and the Rebbe kept telling her, "I've given it over to you." And one time she said, she asked the Rebbe, and she said, "But you're Moshiach, you're Moshiach, you need to do it." And he said, "If I'm Moshiach," she said, "You're our Rebbe, you're Moshiach." He said, "If I'm the Rebbe, then I'm telling you that I'm giving it over to you and you and you." So again, you know, I keep repeating this because I think it's probably the most important piece that we get to say. It seems like we get to say if Moshiach reveals or not. At least, you know, in this, maybe maybe major worse things could happen in the world that would shock things up. You know, I don't know what could happen, you know, happen one way or another, but we still get to say right now. So, okay, so that's I'm just looking at this booklet now. So then we, there were other answers, and maybe we'll put, we scan this, maybe we'll put this. David said we could put a PDF of Rivki's, of David Nachman's booklet on the replay, on our page for the replay, with the replay, and maybe we can put a scan of this booklet also. But the Rebbe just kept giving us like positive, we had gatherings. I'm skipping a lot because I don't want to take too much time. I'm almost done with what I'm going to say before we open up. Yeah, the Kabbalah's funny next. But there were many different interactions, all of them designed to prove to people that this was really happening. So the thing I want to say regarding anybody who was involved at the time, anything that happened, or if you weren't involved at the time and you've heard rumors, or you've been, you know, or people have told you it was just a bunch of crazy Meshuganas who did this. Maybe we were crazy Meshuganas, but the Rebbe was 100% in it with us. So you can do whatever you want with that, but you have to know that. Rivki, you're on mute. So is Basia. You're on mute. You want to say something? You're on mute. You have to unmute yourself. Rivki.
The Rebbe himself said that he's crazy for Moshiach.
Okay.
Exactly. Gonna say that.
Yeah.
That's the worst
People,
thing.
yeah, people are asking questions and want more stories. But I think what we'll do is I'll tell this last thing, and then Rivki and Basia can ask questions. Other people can ask questions. If you want to come on video and ask questions, if Mindy's still there and you want to come on and share, or anybody else who was there at the time, and then we can tell more. You know, with the Farbrengen, I just wanted to make sure that this gets out into the public before I've tried a couple of times and it didn't really happen. So this is the auspicious date. Okay, so basically I mentioned earlier that this idea, the story of the Magid, and then the Sikha that the Rebbe had said that in every generation, there's the Nasi, there's a person who is the potential Mashiach of the generation, but if basically paraphrasing, if the generation's not ready because of various obstacles and delays, then he can't, then it doesn't happen. But in our generation, all of those obstacles have been removed. All the delays have been removed, and now all we have to do is l'kabel panei Mashiach tzidkenu b'pol mamish, to greet and accept Mashiach, the righteous Mashiach in literal actuality. Again, it's up to us to accept, to acknowledge in ourselves, and as I think Rivki said in the booklet, that's how Mashiach gets revealed, by us seeing it and acknowledging it and being willing to share it in whatever way works, you know. So I had at that time, the Rebbe would speak, he started speaking more and more times. When I first moved to Crown Heights, it was just after Shabbos, because it was after the Rebbe's heart attack, and then it became on Shabbos, and then at this time it was accelerating, and the Rebbe would just spontaneously speak any old time and sometimes late at night, to the point where actually there were beepers called Moshiach beepers, because people wanted to know when the Rebbe would suddenly spontaneously was coming out to give us some kind of, text that was just printed, or whether he's going to speak. So a lot of people had Moshiach beepers, and I guess Chaim Baruch was the one who provided the Moshiach, Nikki's husband, the Moshiach beepers, and it was actually kind of comical. Like, if you think of it in retrospect, you'd be minding your own business or putting your kids to bed, and all of a sudden there'd be this mass running of 1,000 people down the street running to 770, and then you'd have to get your kids dressed and go run too. So that was the way it was at the time. But anyway, so the sichas, the different people, Simon Jacobson and Nachman Shapiro, I guess, had two different organizations, and they would switch off weeks, whether they would recap everything the Rebbe had said in all of the different Farbrengens and sichas during the week into one like pamphlet, and they give it to the Rebbe to edit. So I guess they got to take turns. One had the Hebrew and one had the Yiddish alternate weeks, and they were all printed and put in Simon Jacobson's office. I think it was upstairs from 770. I'm pretty sure it was. So it was my job I had this chavrusa with two other women, Fana Ginsberg and Shternesar Krinsky, and it was my job to pick up the sicha. It was always printed on Thursday around 11:30 in the morning, and I would go get it. That's when I learned what it means that something's hot off the press, because it was actually warm. It just been printed. I'd be there like when you go to the bakery to get the donuts when they're right out of the oven. I'd go get the sicha, walk down the block, and we'd sit there and study it for three hours maybe. So and it wasn't like learning a sicha now. I mean, it could potentially, it could be like that, but it was like, what new revelation just happened in the world this week? Like, what are our instructions? What's next? I think in a way, it's so interesting. I think in a way we feel like that with the coronavirus, that the Hashem stopped the world and nobody really knows what's going to happen next. We might have our speculation. It was like that then, but not in a way of like a plague, but it was like that in like a way of Geula is coming, and where are we now, and what's going to happen next, and what's going to break through next, and what miracle, whatever. So we would learn this, and my job was to take it literally. So when we read, that the Rebbe said, all we have to do is greet and accept the Moshiach Tikun in literal actuality, I am like, what does that mean? So I went to 770 and I started asking people, what does it mean to be makabel pnei somebody? And people told me, I asked a few people, and they all told me, make a kabbalah's panim, which is literally reception. So you're mute, Ricky. You're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, dear.
Did you want to say something? You remuted yourself.
Yeah, I unmuted.
Okay.
I'm not on.
Yeah, you're
Can
on.
you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. That was actually one of the big questions I wanted to ask you. Was the Rebbe was also a very practical person who meant things literally. So if he said the only thing left to do was to be makabel pnei Moshiach Tzidkenu, how were people explaining that at that time? And another thing I wanted to ask about was, how did you interpret, and how did your role models or your colleagues interpret this idea that the Rebbe spoke about taking the lights of Tohu and bringing them down into the vessels of Tikun? And beyond that also, how did you manage with your day-to-day life and continuing to do the things that, we all need to do in terms of our responsibilities, yet at the same time have this, sounds like you were on the edge of your chairs constantly. It's a little bit like now, but how was it then to integrate?
You might not like my answer. I just want to answer this question first. Somebody's asking, are we only supposed to see the three panelists? Right now, yes, but when very shortly we'll open to questions, and you can raise your hand. There's a raise your hand feature at the bottom of your screen, and then you can come on the video too if you want to comment or question. So my answer is, I didn't manage my responsibilities, and it actually wasn't good for my family. But I did ask Mashpiyim, and and I was told that the Rebbe would take care. So I'm counting on that. It's been difficult, although I never signed up for Mesiras Nefesh, like the men did. I never would have consciously, but there was, in the end, there was some collateral damage. There's no question about it. How people, now I don't do things that way. I've learned, and everything after the fact, everything's meant to be, right? It is what it is.
Learning experience.
Yeah, and souls sign up for things, and we all have to learn and grow. We all. Would I take it back? I'd do it differently. I'd be more careful. But if I had been careful, it wouldn't have happened. Like
Exactly.
by the end, we were. By the way, our activities of our we formed this 10 women committee because it's this minion. Oh, the minion. I get to the Kabbalah's Panim, and I'll end this piece with that. But I just want to say this minion thing that Leah said, minion. So, and I'm like, there's no such thing as a minion of women. So that night on Hoshana Rabbah, no, Shmini Atzeres. The Rebbe talked. I think it was Shmini Atzeres. The Rebbe talked about how in the Farbrengen, how women actually bring in Shabbos before men, and how women. I don't remember the spits. I haven't learned it in so long, but I remember that the Rebbe said that a minion of women has a spiritual force. And then there was the time. Okay, the Kabbalah's Panim. Remind me that the Rebbe said a sicha about the Kabbalah's Panim also before it happened. So the Kabbalah's Panim in a way was the epitome of everything from our perspective. So based on the sicha, so I couldn't even, this was so crazy to have a Kabbalah's Panim, a reception for Moshiach, that nobody in the Moshiach committee would agree with me. Maybe Mindy, I think, did you agree with me, Mindy? I think maybe Mindy agreed with me, but nobody else would. But then I convinced, like something happened. I convinced Leah, and then somehow, we started. Everything was stealth. We had to do everything like in sneaky ways because there were all these guardians that of the gates that would not allow things to happen if they found out about it. We had to get to the Rebbe somehow. It's kind of like Trump. He has to tweet the people because the media won't let him get through. It really was like that. You had to find a way to get to the Rebbe. Leah was very, very, very brilliant at finding ways to write to the Rebbe that he would understand, like using code words and they wouldn't understand. And then he'd give an overt answer that nobody could deny. That happened a lot of times. So we had to figure out how we wanted to have a Kabbalah's Panim from Moshiach. We picked the day of Koach Tevis, the 28th of Tevis, which was the Rebbe Simchan's birthday. It was coming up. And then we had to first, and we wanted to have some of the best speakers from the whole world come talk about Moshiach, and we wanted to do it downstairs in 770, which is never empty of men, except on the rare occasions when those few times a year when the Rebbe would speak to the women, the men would have to leave. So first we had to get 770. So she, I'm not going to tell that whole story right now, but it was a big hashgacha practice that the person who had the authority to give to kick the men out of 770 for that evening, that it was a Motzei Shabbos, but never would have happened to read what happened to learn a sicha every Motzei Shabbos with his wife, a letter of the Rebbe rather, and that Motzei Shabbos before, I forgot who went to him to ask if we could have 770, but it just happened that after that particular Motzei Shabbos, before the person went to him, they had picked a letter of the previous Rebbe, and it was all about how he loved the women so much and cared so much for the women's Torah that sometimes he would even send the men out of shul and just speak to the women. So that person was like, oh, I guess this is a message for me. And we got permission for 770. And, different things happened. And we went to the Rebbe with, again, I don't remember exactly the sequence of each letter and whatever, but we went to the Rebbe and we sent a letter in, it got in stealth. And the Rebbe, I think we just said we would like to hold I don't remember exactly. I wonder, I have a blue box. It's next to it has a lot of stuff in it that I haven't looked at in 30 years, 28 years. I think I'll take it out after this, see if I have those letters in there. But anyway, yeah. But anyway, so the Rebbe gave a strong bracha, something like Nachon Adavar, like this is the right thing, something like that no one could deny. And people were very ready to deny. And then we invited some of the known to be best speakers, like Rabbi Chaim Glitnick from Australia, and speakers from all over the world. Everybody invited somebody. We wanted to have 2 or 3, but we ended up, I think, with 7. And wow. people were like very skeptical. And then we showed them the Rebbe's letter, the Rebbe's answer, and they came in, and they sometimes were still skeptical. Like I know one of the speakers was staying at the home of somebody who was working with us and was making fun of it the whole time until it actually happened. So we continue. Sorry?
That's how you're onto something really important when there's a lot of.
I mean, there is that. Yeah, there is that. I mean, there are many, many, many more incidents that happened along the way, meetings with shluchos where we had to convince them, things like that. But yeah, but the consciousness was rising as things became more public, as it became more obvious to Chabad that the Rebbe was very in it. so the Kabbalah's Panim, we wanted very much that the Rebbe would come down and speak to us, but we adamantly did not want the Rebbe to come down and just give, do a Farbrengen. We wanted the Rebbe to come down as Moshiach. So we invited the Rebbe, we made a gold engraved invitation, which we addressed to, I think, Kvod Kedushas, Hod Malchuso, like His Glorious Majesty, Kvod Kedushas Admor Shlita Melech HaMashiach. And we said we're holding the Kabbalah's Panim at this time, and we are asking the Rebbe to come down and say Torah Chadasha and reveal himself as Moshiach. And he gave us a lot of brachas also for that letter. So then came the time of the Kabbalah's Panim, everything was ramping up, and we wrote to the Rebbe to ask, we wanted to make it really like the Sudas Mashiach, the festive meal after Mashiach comes is meant to have certain components like the libias and, the great fish and the sharbar, the great ox and the yain mishumar, the mystical wine and whatever. So we asked the Rebbe, like if we should have those things and, something to represent those things. And so Asar B'Tevis, he did a short sicha, and it was all about the Sudas Mashiach and how there has to be Libiasan and Sharbar and Yainam Shumar, and also I think the Shiva Minim, and Kalim of silver and gold. And then at the end he said, and I can't quote this word for word, but it's close, that he said that David HaMelech will say, Ani avarech v'nali levarech, something like that. That might be word for word, I'm not sure. That I will come and bless, like on the Koshel Bracha at the end of the Suda, and it will be a pleasure for me to bless. This is pretty intense. I mean, imagine. So we didn't know if the Rebbe was going to say yes or no to this, like, reveal yourself as Mashiach. Okay, brachas, brachas, brachas. You should have this, you should have that, you should have this. Meanwhile, by that time, word was getting out, and not only to the media, that's a whole other story, but there was word getting out in the Torah world, all around the world. And we found out that in certain of the Misnagdish papers, like I remember Yated Naaman, I'm not really familiar with them, but they were quoting our answers, our questions and answers to the Rebbe verbatim, because I guess they thought that they were so out, over the, like, ridiculous that no commentary was needed. But meanwhile, all of this was spreading around the world by the people who were against it. And by the time we had the Kabbalah's Panim, because of the continuous answers we got from the Rebbe, people got activated, and Chaim Baruch said that he would hook up the Kabbalah's Panim, and at the time he had a telephone, he had WLCC, the telephone hookups, where this is also like modern technology at the time. He was such an innovator. And he was going to provide a live feed to whoever was, going to participate, and people were all over the world. People were making simultaneous Kabbalah's Panim besides the one we had in 770. And I will never forget, and this I know I have in my blue box next to the desk, I will never forget when Beryl Lazar, now the chief rabbi of Russia and I guess friends with Putin, that he wrote back that a Kabbalah's Panim will be arranged simultaneously in, I probably won't remember all the cities, but Moscow, Leningrad, Dnipropetrovsk, Hadych, and I don't remember the two other cities. And I was standing on 770, and I guess maybe Chaim Baruch got I don't remember how I got the fax. Somebody handed it to me, and I was almost jumping out of my skin. But that's what it was like. There were thousands of people in Paris that were like all over the world. People were big and small. And the Rebbe just kept giving brachas. And after the Kabbalah's Panim, Chaim Baruch received for the first time ever a bracha, other than Asker Letzion, just like, basically a bracha. After the Kabbalah's Panim, the Rebbe said, thank you for the nachas ruach, the pleasure that shed garam, the garam, the something, the past, present, future. I don't remember. It's probably in my book, but I don't remember word for it. But like, thank you for like a very elaborate bracha that was unprecedented. In general, one time early on, after that first meeting where I snuck in as the note taker, I stayed after, and we divided into committees, and I stayed after with Rachel Pinson and a couple of other people, and wrote a letter to the Rebbe, like, tell the Rebbe what happened. The Rebbe, I don't remember the answer the Rebbe gave, but I remember hearing from Sterna that we weren't supposed to write about an N'shei Chabad event. That wasn't our job. And second, that the Rebbe gave stronger than he'd ever given for anything that they'd done. So that's the way it was, it was like the Rebbe was egging us on. So the Kabbalah's Panim, the time came, there was almost nobody, no woman from Crown Heights who was not attending. There was at least one, I know one person who said she wasn't coming. I'm not sure if she wasn't the only one. and they closed off the entire thing, and it was packed to the gills. There was people were before it was, I forgot the time, I forget, maybe it was called for 8, I don't remember, but you know, so everything started late, but before the time, like by the half an hour before, no, not one more person could fit in the door. Literally, there might have been 10,000 women there, and the simultaneous, you know, translations, and the speakers started speaking. And they were amazing, and the atmosphere was amazing. And Sima Ashkenazi from Shifra Chabad was there, and she said Yehi for the first time. And the Rebbe was sitting in his office, and he was apparently he was sitting there with his kapata, and we didn't know if he was in, and we didn't know if he was going to come down or not. And at one point, I told my friends that I was going to go up and ask Rebbe Groner if he could ask the Rebbe to come down. So I went up, and Rebbe Groner wasn't there. And the Rebbe's door was open, and I heard the Rebbe moving inside. And I said I could go and ask the Rebbe myself, and I was too terrified, and I couldn't do it. So I ran downstairs. Yeah, another missed opportunity. Like I ran downstairs, and I said, you know, the Rebbe's door is open, and Rebbe Groner's not there, meaning nobody's gonna stop us. And let's be beno slachat. And we ran up, and then he was sitting there again. He was back in his place. The guard at the gate. Alav Shalom, he should be so blessed, but. Anyway, so that's what happened. And then we just asked him, is the Rebbe coming down? He said, I don't know, but I'm still sitting here in my kapata. I'm waiting to see. So the whole thing was like this immense intensity, and it went on till the middle of the night, and the Rebbe never came down. We all sat there after people left. We all just sat there crying. But yeah, that was yeah.
Sorry,
yes.
Stefan.
That's most. I'm done. This is enough for now. So yeah, go ahead and ask, and listeners could ask. And,
I just want to ask you something. You mentioned there were speakers from all around the world. Was this the video that has been circulating of Rabbi Groner from Australia?
Yes, he was one of them. Yeah.
Groner.
Yeah.
Was Miriam Swerdlove the MC? Because there's a short video of
probably.
Miriam. There's a short video, maybe afterwards, you know, I could send it to you, and I don't know if you want to put it on your page or whatever, but very, very powerful. You could just feel, you know, that you were able to hear a pin drop, and the ear was so thick.
Yeah,
and
yes.
And I remember something really, really important that, or maybe you were going to bring this up, that Rabbi Groner mentioned. He said that he wanted to impart something that was extremely important. He said, whether the Rebbe comes down or not, you should know, and he said this to all the women, the organizers especially, this with such an MS. You did it with so much sincerity, with your entire heart and soul, your entire being. And now that I'm hearing, you know, firsthand really what that meant, it consumed you. It was your entire, you know, your life, and you breathed it and lived it. And he said, don't be discouraged. Don't feel let down. Don't feel what he said, what you've accomplished with an MS. It broke through the Satan, and it's something historic, and it was something tremendous.
I don't doubt it, but it was pretty devastating at the time. Yeah, but and it's a long process, you know, and it is a long process. There's a lot of water under the bridge, and a lot of people are gone. But you know, now it's time. Now it's time.
I'm sorry, you and the N'shei Chabad and all the women, you paved the way for us. You broke through tremendous thick walls. Now that wall is paper thin because
Hopefully.
of you, that were so courageous and so brave to do what you did, in spite of all the discouragement and the criticism and the skepticism. So hats off to you. Kol hakavod.
Thank you. You made me remember one more thing that I should say. The day after the Kabbalas Panim, which was Motzei Shabbos, so it was Sunday. What happens on Sunday? Dollars. So people went to. We were at Dollars, and the Rebbe asked almost all the women who went by, "Were you at the? Were you in Yiddish? Were you by the Kabbalas Panim? Or were you by the? No, wait. The Malam." He said, "Malam Malka. Were you by the Malam Malka? Were you by the Malam Malka?" And everybody said yes, of course, because everyone was there. And then somebody from the Masada Kedushin, one of the women, is it not Masada Kedushin? I can't remember what they were called. Masada or something.
Bada Masada.
Bada Masada, thank you. Long time. Bada Masada. So I think it was Dorit, but I'm not sure. Maybe it was Rustabar. I don't remember. But somebody went. Was like the last person. Like they ushered us all by, and then they went themselves. And the Rebbe said, "Were you by the Malam Malka?" And they said yes. And he said, "Then you have the blessings of the Almighty."
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm really glad I remembered that. Yeah. I'm sure that our group, if we got together, would remember, many more details, and it should be done. It should be done on video. It should be public record. I was looking for a video to send to you, Rivki, on YouTube yesterday, and I think I saw that the Malava Malka, the Kabbalah's Finding from Moshiach, I think it might be up on YouTube.
It is around. It's definitely around.
Okay.
There's a small clip of it, but I have more than just about 10 minutes.
Yeah, we have the whole thing here, and I think we've converted it. Last year we converted all the videos of us that I had of us going to the Rebbe and of the Kabbalah's Finding, but they're not very good quality. But I guess we should post them somewhere.
I think we have a lot of work to do. Very
Yeah.
fast.
Really
Very fast. I don't want to do this over a long outstretched period.
It's been long and outstretched enough, I guess.
Exactly.
Okay, well, I'm open for questions, comments. What year did I'm looking at the chat here. What year, if people want to raise your hand and come on, what year did this event take place? It was in 1992. 1992. Yeah, in January. Tevis, the end of Tevis. Yeah, David says we have the whole recording. Somebody says you can see it on Rebbe Drive. We have a chat where we reveal, where we visualize redemption of 10 ladies. That's awesome. Oris of Ani Lip is very innovative teacher. Ani, you're one of the, you say things that I want to listen to. It doesn't happen all that often, but Oris of Tohu and Kelim of Tikun is the mystical becomes the practical, and the practical becomes the mystical. Yeah, there's a lot to say about that, but somebody asked me at the time, nobody talked about it. We didn't really talk about it. Because there were too many other things, like, one day the Rebbe would say you have to, only through Simcha, so we'd have to make some big dance thing, or like another day the Rebbe would say, open your eyes, and another time the Rebbe would say, whatever. There was constantly things coming out things to do. So we didn't sit and think. Nobody, first of all, I should say, I've talked, I don't want to say too long because it had to happen, but I want to open the floor. But most people then, even the people, you'd be surprised, and this is one of the reasons I think there was so much fake news happening and so much opposition, because the people who were standing behind the Rebbe, who were the closest to the Rebbe in that sense, who had the most responsibility, did not have time to go look at the edited Sikha for 3 hours every week. It didn't happen. So they were there, they heard what they heard. And many things were said that nobody was really studying those things. It wasn't like an archive in books that you're gonna, what sikha are we gonna learn this week from which volume? No, it was like, live and then printed up in this paper pamphlet for the week, and then the next, then the next day, and the Rebbe's out there speaking again, and then 2 days later, and then he's giving away a Clintris and what?
Right, and Shifra, maybe that's why because this is something I didn't understand for a really, really, really long time, and I think I really truly understand it this past year since becoming so involved. And I've been teaching sikhas and learning and involved in education for many years now, but the Rebbe emphasized again and again and again, like, so what are we supposed to do to bring Mashiach is learn in Yani Geula Mashiach, learn in Yani Geula Mashiach. The Rebbe repeated that. If I think there's and we went through, I remember when we first started the group, we're going through sikhas, like, what were the things that the Rebbe said we could do? Like, what were practical things we could do? And Kabbalah's Malchus was one of them, but there was, several different things that the Rebbe, very specifically emphasized that should be done, in different sikhas, but one thing that seemed like just very prevalent throughout was this learning in Yani Mashiach and Geula.